Welcome to SandCity Sports. I am your host, the Cape Cod Kid, artist formerly known as Andre King, and we're back again to bring you all the sports and current events news stories that you need to know. Folks, it may be Taco Tuesday, okay, but more excitedly here in the Cape, we are thrilled to have Drew Pops back in the studio with us. Welcome back, Drew.
Thanks for having me.
Indeed, indeed. Very busy summer. Drew keeps the towns of Barnstable, Mashpee, maybe even Falmouth.
I don't go that far.
No, doesn't go that far.
That's too far.
They're going during the summer months, helping, at Pizza One Subs too. The great people over there. So he's doing a lot, but we're happy to have him back, as I said before, and we're going to get right into it, folks. We finished the last episode talking about the NBA All-Decade teams. Now we have an NBA luminary, NBA emissary, a Boston Celtics expert for sure. So Drew Pops, what do you think about these three All-Decade teams? We'll start with the first team, that being LeBron James, James Harden, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Kawhi Leonard.
Am I picking between these three teams, which I would rather have?
I'm just saying, we'll get there, because that's another argument that we're going to need to make. But what do you think of the first team as constituted?
It's a little tiny bit heavy, like guard-wise.
Okay.
Not necessarily guards, but there's not really a center there.
Indeed.
You could throw LeBron James at the 5. And what I would do with that team is I'd throw Curry at the 1. I'd throw James Harden at the 2. Durant at the 3. Kawhi could guard most power forwards, I'd say. Throw him at the 4. You throw LeBron at the 5. Is this them now, or is this them all time?
No, this is the 2010s. So 2010 to, we're going in, it's going to be 2020, an election year.
Okay.
So this is the NBA. They put out their first, second, and third teams just for that 10-year span.
Right.
And interestingly enough, to your point about this team not having a center, NBA 2K put Dwight Howard at center with this same group. I believe Kawhi was kicked off and Dwight Howard was in the mix. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, he was good when he was doing his thing, but I mean, that was for about probably half of that decade, if that he was an elite center. No way.
Yes.
No way.
He took and actually the Orlando Magic went to the NBA Finals in 2009. Okay, so we're not even talking about the 2010s. Dwight Howard's time as a 3-time consecutive Defensive Player of the Year was really in the first decade of the 21st century rather than the second decade, with this, which this looks at. But back to your point, I adamantly agree that I would not bump Kawhi and put Dwight Howard on this list.
No.
For those reasons, his inconsistency. And so I don't necessarily, we're going to kick it back to you, with the first team. I don't have a problem with there being no center just because the NBA is going to this positionless style of play in which the center position, similar to the running back in football, which we're going to get to, has really been kind of devalued and, re-emphasized. This is much different than the, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing era. And so I didn't really necessarily have a problem. I agreed firmly with this first team.
Oh yeah. Times have changed. I mean, it's not a center's league anymore. And if you are a center, you better learn how to shoot a 3.
Indeed.
Shout out to Brook Lopez.
Shout out to Brook.
Congratulations, you learned how to do it.
Yeah,
nice
and the 2020s, Embiid is definitely a front runner, to be on that list.
I think Ben Simmons needs to learn how to shoot before Embiid does. It's like, you better get going.
He could learn a thing or two from both those centers.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And a few other centers. Aaron Baines is another center.
Yeah, those were pretty sketchy 3-pointers.
They went in the basket.
Good luck. Yeah.
They went in the basket. Yeah. I got into this on the last episode, so I'm not going to dive too hard into the first team. Drew, your thoughts on the second team with Westbrook, Anthony Davis, Carmelo Anthony, Blake Griffin, and Chris Paul?
They're all great teams. Of the 3 that I'm seeing here, I think that's the one I would like the least. Chris Paul, great player. He's a great point guard, but I mean, what am I really going to do with him and Westbrook on the same squad? Westbrook can play the 2, I guess, but he can't really shoot. It's a shooting league, so I don't know about that. I always liked Carmelo, even though he never did anything, but he was disgusting for a good while in that portion. But that was probably, again, halfway through his best years. So of all the and Blake Griffin, I mean, Blake Griffin's good, but in the names of, I wouldn't have Blake Griffin on. I think he is not even close to any of the people on the first team in terms of skill. So
Yes.
that team to me is very exploitable. Not sold on that team at all.
I had major problems with the second team myself.
Yeah.
First and
Stinks.
foremost,
It doesn't stink, but compared to the other one, I think it stinks.
yeah,
I think they get destroyed.
they do. If we're talking about team versus team,
Yeah.
Carmelo, Chris Paul, and Blake Griffin, I had significant issues with those three. What are your thoughts, first of all, on? I think Westbrook and Anthony Davis is no question.
I forgot about Anthony Davis. I didn't even mention him. So yeah, of course you throw Anthony Davis out there with Westbrook. I mean that's a nice little duo. But I just don't know what you do with. I mean maybe if we're talking about Carmelo with the Nuggets way before this he was probably pretty much in New York at this time.
Indeed.
So I mean if we're talking Nuggets Melo, it's a different story. It just doesn't have enough firepower for me. It's not spicy enough.
To your point about Nuggets and Melo, that was 2010 when under the leadership of Chauncey Billups, the Denver Nuggets went to the Western Conference Finals and lost to the LA Lakers. That was the only time in Carmelo Anthony's career that he'd been to a conference finals. So the majority, as you said, of this time frame, he would be with the New York Knicks. Looked at this a little bit in the last episode. He did put up blazing numbers.
Yeah, he was
to start
still good.
2010. We're talking about 28 points per game, 27 points per game. He was scoring quite a bit.
Yeah.
Were the Knicks winning?
They beat the Celtics in a series that I was at the Game 6 that we lost, and it was very disheartening to me. So I'll never forget that.
Okay, so they might have been,
It was good times for them.
Yeah, playoff victory. But for the entire decade, Melo's scoring average is 22.6 over the span of the 10 years, just to put it in perspective. So we have some high 20s, but then we also have, we finished the decade, with Oklahoma City, and obviously last year, short time with the Rockets in the teens. So his overall average, is in the low 20s for the decade. We know Melo's not defensive minded, and he's done the whole promo tour, going into the 2020s, but he hasn't necessarily been a team minded guy for the majority of his career. This new outlook notwithstanding. And so, again, as I said in the last episode, to me, he has to go. To get into the other two, unless you kind of want to lead off on Griffin and Chris Paul.
I mean, Chris Paul, I'm not the biggest Chris Paul fan. I know a lot of people are. I'm not the biggest fan of him, so his name to me, I mean, it doesn't do it for me. Blake Griffin, he's good. He's not really elite anymore. He was pretty elite maybe during the first half, but a lot of these people, they didn't do it for the whole decade. Most of these people on the first team, they pretty much did it for the entire time.
Indeed, they
a lot
did.
of people on the second team, we're talking about 5-6 years. I mean, that's still 4 years, 3 years that they weren't doing much. Carmelo's the only one in this whole list that is in the unemployment line, doesn't have a job at all.
True.
So, I mean, that right there. And then Blake Griffin's rotting away in Detroit. So
Detroit started off the year last year on fire, and then they dwindled down, into mediocrity. Made it into the playoffs. I believe they were a 7 or 8 seed, and by that time Blake Griffin was injured.
Yeah, he was playing on one leg
once again, and so it was a one and done for them. For me, in terms of Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, my feelings about Chris Paul, he's a loser. Okay,
he's a loser. Nice.
Period. I am not a Chris Paul fan. He is not a uniter, much more of a divider, and that's why you see him in the predicament that he's in right now. He's in Oklahoma City. Doesn't necessarily want to be there, but they're not going to be able to move him, because of that ginormous contract. And, if you're a young team, do you bring him in to mess with? I don't know. That take might seem harsh, but that's just the way I feel about it in terms of his inability to get the point that in this modern era, particularly with the AAU and everybody trying to build their brand, folks are not looking for a big brother, okay? That's why he never got along with Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, whom they needed, and that's why they never got over the hump. By the way, that Clippers team was the last team to beat a one squad from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
That was the last team to beat the Golden State Warriors before their dynasty was inaugurated. Okay, and they should have matched up with the Golden State Warriors. As I mentioned, I believe it was in 2015 but they lost Game 6 at home, and they were up 17 points to a Kevin McHale-led Rockets team. In that game, James Harden was on the bench, being James Harden, and then they had a chance to win Game 7, and they lost that too. So that goes for Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, and you can throw Doc Rivers in that conversation as well. All right, don't even need to get too deep into the history lesson. But Chris Paul, I can't, you have to be positive. And this whole...
He's a whiner.
Yeah, and the whole my way or the highway, he kind of has the same attitude, the same swagger that a lot of his classmates do. He's class of 03.
Yeah.
So that's how LeBron has a my way or the highway approach. And even though Chris Paul was one draft class behind, DWade, this is the Banana Boat group.
Yeah.
DWade has a my way or the highway approach. Well, guess what? Both of those players are much better than Chris Paul.
For sure.
So they can get away with it.
Yeah.
But Chris Paul, not only that he's not as good as those, but you're a point guard. Okay, you're the floor general. Okay, you're supposed to get everyone in line on the same page, and he certainly didn't do it with the Clippers. And it's clear that he's really not capable of doing it because he got bounced out of Houston after 2 years. All right, so for me, and bounce around a little bit, Drew, keep me in line if you need to. But we'll take a look at the third team. The third team is Kobe Bryant, Giannis, Wade, LaMarcus, and Paul George. But Chris Paul, he's got to be demoted to at least the third team. Your points about Blake, for me, same thing. Didn't do it for the whole decade, A. And B, he is incredibly injury prone. And C, I'll kick it back to you, Drew.
So this is like the third class.
The third class.
Oh, I didn't even. So Kobe's on the third class.
Kobe's on the third team.
That's absolutely pathetic. That Blake Griffin or Chris Paul and maybe even Carmelo is above Kobe. I mean, how much Kobe are we talking, I guess? How much Kobe did we have in that
Now,
era?
so in terms of Kobe, once again, he did win the second championship in 2010.
So it counts.
Okay. To begin the decade. But by all accounts, myself, I believe after he won that second championship, that's when the decline began. So Kobe, he doesn't have the Achilles. I get those two things confused until, I think it's 2013, 2014. We're gonna get that stat for you. But then he returns. His last year, kind of a swan song, and he scores
80 points in the final game is just insane.
Yeah, but he scored 60 points, but he was on like 50 shots.
Yeah.
So this was not. Listen, if this is the first decade again of the 21st century, Kobe's on the first team, no question, because he wins 5 championships.
I didn't understand the whole way that it was grouped.
The dynamic. He wins 5 championships in that first decade. He wins in 2000, 2001, 2003. Okay, then that team,
So he's old Kobe. He's old Kobe. I'd still rather have old Kobe than Blake Griffin if I'm making that team.
Indeed.
That's. I would switch him with Blake and even possibly Chris Paul. If I already have Westbrook, what do I need Chris Paul for?
Very true.
I'll put Kobe there. That'd be great. That would make that team a hell of a lot better.
Indeed. And for me, I look at Giannis, and that's I use that same argument. Now, yes. Giannis has just started, to come on in the last 2 or 3 years, so I can understand and respect them putting him on the third team. Quickly back to Kobe. Folks were walking off the set of First Take when this list came out last week. Molly Quinter Monroe, she had to bounce.
Yeah.
She had to bounce off the set because Mr. Max Kellerman,
he's just crazy.
Okay, was adamant that Kobe, and again, we can understand, but Max, I don't think he factored in how weak the second team is.
He just says he's another Skip Bayless. He basically says the opposite of what is true to get people to walk off the set, to get us talking about him. He is one of those classic analysts that just, I hope that he doesn't believe all the stuff that he says, but he might be that stupid. I don't know.
He loves to play devil's advocate.
He loves to play devil's advocate.
And so
Skip Bayless loves too.
Yeah.
And it's just pathetic. Just say as you feel, And then you've got the Felger and Mazes out there that they'll say anything anti-Boston, whether they believe it or not, just to really make you go, you're a Boston media analyst. How do you feel this way?
Stir the pot.
Stir the pot. That's what they're there for, and it's pathetic, but they wouldn't have a job without it. So
yeah, the soundness of the arguments, when you take that approach,
it's pretty thin.
Yeah, kind of weak.
Yeah.
And so, with Kobe, definitely agree there. But Giannis, in terms of the last couple of years, but again, we're only talking about 2, maybe 3 years, maybe 3. Giannis has just kind of come into his own.
Yeah.
But to me, you got Wade and you got Paul George. They both definitely should be on the second team. Dwayne Wade.
belong, yeah.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade's case. Look, he goes to 4 NBA Finals in the decade. 4. Okay, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Obviously, he wins 2 of those. And people, he won the championship in 06, but again, previous decade, fine. But Dwyane Wade's career took another, went up. If we're looking at the stock market, after LeBron left, Dwyane Wade didn't take a dip. His career kind of went up again. Yeah. In terms of that whole challenge of being the guy. In those battles that he had, when LeBron James went back to Cleveland in 2015, Chris Bosh was good in those earlier years before, unfortunately, his career was sidelined. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about a guy that goes to 4 NBA Finals in the decade, wins 2 of them, and then has 2 or 3 more good years, and he's on the 3rd team.
He could be on the 2nd team. He probably
but Carmelo, Blake, and Chris Paul are on the 2nd team. Unacceptable.
Who made this list? Whose list is this?
I believe this is NBA.com. I'm pretty sure NBA.com came out with this list. I
don't think Westbrook belongs on the 2nd page, to be honest. I like Westbrook a lot, and he's done a lot with the triple doubles and this and that, but you could switch him out with Wade. You could definitely. There's a lot of people on the 2nd team that could easily be swapped for 3rd.
Indeed.
A couple of them could honestly even fall right off the page.
Off the list, off all the 3 teams completely. Paul George is another guy that I would put there. We have to factor in that he did lose, a year and a half to 2 years because of the unfortunate injury with Team USA. Nonetheless, how did he bounce back? Last year of the decade, he's an MVP candidate.
Yeah, he
top 3, in the MVP conversation. And he had a pretty good 2018 with Oklahoma City as well. First year kind of getting used to it. And then, the year before that, 2017 with the Pacers, he's back to old Paul George. And again, those teams that he had in Indiana in 2011 and 2012 were battling with the Miami Heat, okay, with the Heatles, the big 3 for Eastern Conference supremacy.
He didn't have much help.
Those teams were kind of blue collar. You had some workers. You had the Lance Stevensons, blowing LeBron's ear.
Yeah, that's what they had. That's the best. That was like the best that they had other than him.
The Roy Hibberts. There's some other guys. I have to go back. Look at that. Those teams under the leadership, I believe, Nate McMillan was still there early on, building it up, and he's doing a great job now. But he starts the decade strong, has an injury, and then comes back and finishes the decade strong. That is night and day different to me than somebody like a Blake Griffin, who, Paul George's injury was a freak accident. Blake Griffin has been injured. He came into the league and was hurt.
Yeah, he's been
hurt. Came into the league, had to have microfracture surgery and missed his entire rookie year.
Yeah,
and then he's been hurt ever since then.
Yeah.
And Chris Paul, his recent injuries notwithstanding, this is just a sticking point for me. Now, again, there are certain people, I can be kind of black and white. I do not like Rajon Rondo. I don't like him. Can't stand him. If you can't get along with Doc Rivers, you can't get along with anybody.
Okay? He's a dick. He's definitely a dick.
Okay, and so, but is he talented? Yeah. You get a motivated Rajon Rondo? Absolutely.
I like that.
And the group that they have right now with the Lakers, very similar to what they had in New Orleans before Boogie Cousins got injured. Yeah. You put a motivated Rajon Rondo on the court, and he's all
All you gotta do is get that boy to the playoffs.
And
he's a playoff.
Yeah, he's a
you just
monster.
Gotta get him there with his health and with the hopes that he doesn't tear your whole locker room apart.
Yeah.
But if you can get playoff Rondo and he hasn't pissed you all off yet, that's a nice thing to have.
This same Portland Trailblazers team that went to the Western Conference Finals and gave the Golden State Warriors a pretty good run.
Yeah.
A motivated Rajon Rondo and Drew Holiday. Okay, 4 games, go home. When Portland had home court advantage. So Rajon Rondo, he's very, Chris Paul, he's frankly, he's in the declining years of his career. He's nowhere near. I think a motivated Rajon Rondo right now is better than a Cliff Paul.
One more Rajon Rondo thing. He left the Celtics and he was on the Bulls. We would have lost that series against the Bulls had he not broken his hand.
Indeed.
We were down 2-0.
Yes.
They were just crushing us out of nowhere.
Yes.
People forget about that. Rajon Rondo, great playoff point guard.
Him and Jimmy Butler coming into that series motivated. Did he play both those? I know he lit the Celtics up the first game. I don't know.
I think he hurt it in the second game, and they still ended up winning or something. But I think he was trying to play after the broken hand, and he couldn't play.
Couldn't do it. I think he might have injured in the first game, played the second game, and then he was like...
Whatever he did, he torched us for 1 or 2. Like, torched us bad. I think he torched us in 2. But it was crazy. That was nuts.
Folks, we're at the Cape Cod Media Center, so we got to recognize, the people that are doing their thing. Darby Lyons in the studio passing through. You know what I'm saying? My man, with Galactic, we recognize. You can't see him on the camera, but he's here putting in the work. Okay? Like Coach Kid likes to say, folks, the games are easy, but it's the will to prepare. The will to prepare is what makes the difference. Okay, and the folks here at the Cape Cod Media Center, Darby Lions, chief among them, are doing the work that it takes, to produce, quality material. The other interesting, on this list, for me, quick time check, because I gotta get going. I get a little crazy, Drew.
Yeah,
I get a little crazy, but sometimes you have to.
I like when you do it at Pizza One at about 9 o'clock. That way I don't have to do any cleaning.
Yes, I should be doing some of the cleaning for some of the loitering that goes on during the year. LaMarcus Aldridge, sneakily, he was tough when he was with Portland, and then he's been solid for a team that people are forgetting is going to be a problem in the Western Conference this year with DeJounte Murray coming back.
Yep.
He's been solid for the San Antonio's. I think he's been an all-star 2-3 years with the Spurs.
People forget what he did with Portland.
People
forget he ever even was there.
Yeah.
But
and
he's always put up big numbers.
So, over the course of 10 years, start to finish, he's been way more consistent than Blake Griffin.
Yeah, for sure. He belongs on the third team. Blake Griffin, I don't think belongs on any of the lists, honestly. Maybe he's could be an honorable mention.
Yeah.
But to put him on the second team and snub some of these other people, I don't agree with. LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, he's going to probably play center. Who's going to match up with him? Anthony Davis on the other team, maybe, but I don't know. LaMarcus Aldridge, he's been good for a decade. He's been one that, if you look at he probably fell in there right at the perfect time where 2010 he started to hit his peak.
Indeed.
And then all the way down, he's just been crushing it for probably 10 solid years.
So there's a little bit of stargazing here. There's a little bit, kind of favoring the big name, big market, so on and forth. I'd
like to have all the numbers just.
Yes, we try to get some of these up here.
The proof was in the pudding,
But Wade for sure, Paul George almost, and then even LaMarcus. I would switch them, from the third to the second team. Okay, folks, moving over to the NFL. Looking at what you're buying and what you're not buying. We'll start with the theatrics. We'll start with the drama, and we'll make our way from there. Antonio Brown, many people believe, he is just one of the best, if not the best, wide receivers in the league. Scored 15 touchdowns last year. If you're going to be on a winning team, you needed somebody like that. But the dust that he has kicked up already in LA, or I don't know if they're the LA, the Oakland, or the Las Vegas Raiders, whatever the heck they are, is notable. We start with him going to the cryotherapy, getting the cryotherapy treatment, not using the proper procedures, and then allegedly, even though I don't necessarily believe this, getting frostbite, him not being ready for camp there. Then, he doesn't have the correct helmet, which I told you listen to football people, was something he would have known last winter. That the requirements had changed. But him making this a huge training camp issue in August. Saying that he was threatening to retire if he doesn't get the right helmet. Today, the NFL rejected his appeal, and he's come to camp and said that, okay, he'll get an updated model of the helmet.
I found a newer old helmet.
A newer old helmet.
So he still kind of got his way. That's his way of saying I still kind of.
What are your thoughts on A, the Antonio Brown soap opera, and B, how that affects the Oakland Raiders' chances, in the AFC?
He's a prima donna. He's always some sort of issue. And I got this Steelers fan who is in my work, and he's always preaching that he's so glad Antonio's gone, this and that. He is a big locker room headache and whatever, but I mean, that boy is still a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. If you can get him on the field and, keep his mouth shut marginally, I mean, he's going to help you. So it's a bunch of, he's just ridiculous, but you knew what you were getting when you signed him. You knew that he was going to do all these childish antics, saying I'm not going to play or whatever. We'll see come week 1, but I expect him to have a good year. I'm not the biggest Derek Carr fan, so we'll see, but I don't think too much of it. It's just one of those things. He loves to keep his name in the news for all kinds of ridiculous. He loves being in the public eye. He's pathetic, but he's a great wide receiver. I'll give him that.
Indeed. For me, the argument that was most convincing is that, the Raiders brought Antonio Brown in for his box office value more than his value on the field. Dallas Cowboys, the most profitable sports franchise in the world. They've won 3 playoff games, maybe 4 in the last quarter century. Okay, and so a team that is making a move to a new location, that wants to stay, in. That is the argument that I found most persuasive. I am not confident that, under John Gruden's leadership, and with, Derek Carr, who's going to be a lot different than Ben Roethlisberger, that it's going to work. Nonetheless, if it doesn't work, which is the way that I'm leaning, my view is that the Raiders kind of brought him in knowing full well, the soap opera, the drama, the 5-part miniseries that it was going to be, to hedge their bets and make sure that they're, more relevant in the headlines, than necessarily in terms of wins and losses in a very, very competitive NFL. We will, let's go over, we're talking about players, and we're going to get to, we're going to kind of segue from the players to the overall teams and predictions. But Dak Prescott, also made major headlines in a different way. Dak and Antonio Brown are pretty much on different ends of the spectrum in terms of, personality. Dak's much more, lead by example, say what I mean what I say, and man a few words, whereas Antonio's obviously, in that mold of the diva wide receiver. But nonetheless, Dak ruffled feathers across the NFL and the sports world yesterday when it was reported that he turned down $30 million from the Dallas Cowboys and countered with a $40 million a year offer. This needs to be unpacked in a couple things before I kick it over to you. First of all, as I'm learning about the NFL, the way that it works, and NFL people have said this, that the quarterback market is broken. But the way that the quarterback market currently works is whatever the last guy got, the next guy up for a contract, irregardless of who it is, has to get more, has to ask for more. So the numbers just keep going up. I have a little bit here for the numbers. So just in terms of yearly earnings, the top 5 in the NFL are Matt Stafford at $29.5 million a year, Cousins with $29, Andrew Luck with $27.5, and Aaron Rodgers with $26.5. Further down the list is Russell Wilson, Ben Roethlisberger, and Cam Newton. Now, the overall guaranteed money I don't have. We'll get those stats up for you in terms of the size, but I think Russell was the last one to get this, a mega deal that was somewhere around $35 a year. And, people are always comparing Dak to Wentz, and I believe the numbers that I saw was Wentz signed for $32-33 a year, somewhere around there. And then just throwing a little bit more stat jazz that if they franchised Dak, then he would get $33 million a year, and if they franchised him again, he would get $36 million a year. Somewhere in these averages. Okay, all that stat jazz aside, the NFL. We talked about the NBA. I'm gonna kick it over to you, Drew. I'm kicking it over to you. The NFL, okay, voted on their top 100 players. We covered this last week. NFL players, 1,100 NFL players voting. Dak Prescott was not in the top 100. Okay? Was not in the top 100.
I believe it.
All right, and yet he wants $40 million a year. Drew, your thoughts?
I think it's just smart negotiating. He knows the market, and he's not dumb. I'm sure his agent's not dumb. He knows that with what the Cowboys are trying to build and what they're trying to do, that they need him. And who are they going to go and get? The whole thing about the quarterback market is there's not just a bunch of quarterbacks floating around. And a lot of people think that Dak Prescott stinks. And I don't think he's great, but I think that he fits in their system well enough with Zeke and with how that offense is built. That offense is very ground and pound. It's all through Zeke. And when he's doing his thing, it allows Prescott to be able to do his thing. Those two thrive off each other, and when they're really cooking, they can win games. And without him, I mean, what do they have then? So he's basically saying, give me $40 million, or you can figure out something else out, and someone will give him $30 million somewhere else. Now he's basically just saying, hey, it's all in his corner.
Indeed, and you bring up a great point. They do not have a backup, a quarterback in waiting, as you see many times when teams move on from an aging quarterback. That we're going to get to New England, but that's, not that we had that new, but nonetheless, I keep hearing that other teams are not necessarily willing to pay Dak in the $30 million a year range, even though his overall numbers, people say in NFL, the quarterback gets far too much credit, quarterback gets far too much money. Dak Prescott has more wins, as I understand it, than Carson Wentz. I think, he, in terms of just wins over the last 3 or 4 years, he's up there with Brady. Now, again, who is more responsible? The way that the Dallas Cowboys team is built, huge offensive line. Your running back leads the league in rusher, number 4 overall pick, who was number 16, I believe, in the NFL's top 100. But again, Dak's agent's argument and the leverage that there is nobody right now, today, that could necessarily step in and replace Dak Prescott. And what we did not mention, just in listening to you, Dak Prescott is a very good running quarterback.
Yeah.
He's not a small guy.
No, he's big.
No, he 240, 245, and he can lower that shoulder, and obviously, yes, quarterback, and Dak does know how to slide. He doesn't take hits, he doesn't need to hit, but with that huge offensive line, and particularly when plays break down and you need to use your legs, Dak is outstanding at that, and making those plays, which he doesn't get nearly enough credit for. And so for me, and I'll kick it back, but in conclusion, I do agree. It is smart negotiating because, again, this is the market. NFL, they're looking at a market cap, and this is why Roger Goodell is getting, of $25 billion. It's at 16, 17, 18. They're going towards $25 billion, and they're frankly ahead of the curve. So what you hear former players saying is, why should a player take a discount, because, to let a billionaire, but at the same time, the Dallas Cowboys, they do have a lot of other young players that they need to pay, on the defense. And the New England model, in terms of taking less,
doesn't work everywhere.
So smart to ask for it. Does he deserve it? I don't think so. And it's gonna be interesting how it plays out. I kind of, the more and more I talk about it, and I'm not necessarily shocked, but I kind of tip my hat to him for betting on himself.
It's smart negotiating. I mean, does DeMarcus Cousins deserve $29 a year and should be the second highest paid quarterback in the league? Absolutely not.
Kirk Cousins.
I mean, Kirk Cousins.
Yes,
DeMarcus Cousins. Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
Kirk Cousins. Excuse me. No, he
Absolutely
doesn't.
not.
But he commanded the market at the time.
Indeed.
And said, okay, guess what? I'm not even close to one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
But of all the free agents, I might be actually the best one. And I know that you all need a quarterback.
That's right.
So guess what? Pay me. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. It's smart negotiating. And is he worth that? No, but is he worth it in terms of, it's the way it goes. That's just the way she goes.
It's the way it goes. So Dak, tip my hat, for betting on yourself, building your brand.
Get the money.
Regardless of whether you might not be that player. Now, okay, coming here to New England, to Titletown, we got to talk about Tom Brady as well at the quarterback position. There's been a lot of talk and conjecture the last couple of days, and we need to chime in on this in terms of Tom Brady getting an $8 million raise, allegedly. Well, he gets $8 million more than he otherwise did. So now he's, what is he, 23, 24, 25, somewhere in there, million, nowhere. 6 quarterbacks going to make more than him at least. But this idea that the Patriots can move on from Tom Brady, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I firmly believe that he'll finish his days here. I don't know. I mean, I guess only time will tell, but it just doesn't seem. I'm sure they could get a lot for him. I'm not really sure what, but why? Why bother? We're trying to win now. There's no reason that we couldn't win the Super Bowl again. Maybe if our entire team got in a plane accident and we had to replace the whole team. I mean, I just don't understand why. I don't think he wants to go anywhere else. So why would we want to move him? I'm not buying it. I think it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo.
Indeed, mumbo jumbo, horse manure. Myself, I just think that this narrative is clickbait. I tip my hat to Tom Brady's PR folks. Last week after he signed the contract, then next thing you know, next major storyline is his house is on the market. Huge storyline and so on and forth. Fact of the matter is this. First and foremost, Tom Brady's still playing at a very high level. So what? He's 42 right now. He is still playing at a very high level. Now, again, QBR in the Super Bowl was a little bit low. They ended up still winning that game, and they made it to the Super Bowl. And he got them there, with what he did against the Chiefs, who were by far the more talented team, at least offensively. So I still believe that Tom Brady has a lot of good football left in him. That's A for me. B is, as we discussed last week, you cannot hit quarterbacks. Okay? No. It's two-hand touch for quarterbacks in this modern NFL. Okay? If this was the 80s or the 90s, I would have a much different opinion. Because in those, you could actually lay a quarterback on his behind.
Yeah.
Now, you can't even land on a quarterback. You can't even land on a quarterback with your full body weight. Okay? That's a penalty. So, Tom Brady's looking at a situation whereas, he's this fitness fanatic, We all know that, time versus time, so he's keeping himself in this, great shape, all this modern medicine. So if he comes into camp in shape over the next, he's 42, so the next 3 years, which he will, okay? And then you put him in a situation in this incredibly violent and physical game of football where you essentially cannot hit him. Why wouldn't he continue to play at a high level and help the Patriots to compete for and win Super Bowls, which we're gonna get to in terms of predictions, And then back to what I was saying with the Oakland, Los Angeles, Las Vegas Raiders. Tom Brady is box office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about butts in the seat. Okay. Yeah. And it remains to be seen. This is a great argument, that Rob Parker and others have brought up. How many Super Bowls has Bill Belichick won with another quarterback? Not true, but still, he's always had a Hall of Fame outstanding quarterback. Yeah, Matt Castle, great, for that 1 year and, short sample sizes. But you have arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, still committed to the process, still playing at a high level, and still filling every single stadium, not just in Foxborough, but across the NFL. So everybody's making money. Never mind the fact that he's married to a supermodel who makes $hundreds of millions more in her own right. Okay, so for that, so in terms of on the field, and off the field, distinctly different than Antonio Brown. I just think that it's not reasonable or foreseeable that the Patriots would part ways, with Tom Brady for those reasons. Any other final takes?
Go C's, baby.
Go C's.
That's what I'm on.
Yes,
I'm on C's.
Yeah, we're starting early.
That's where we are now.
We're starting early. Folks, that's going to do it. Go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe as you feel the need. I am your host, Kip Cut Kid, artist formerly known as Andre King. We are ecstatic and very pleased to have Drew Pops back in the building. And we will see you here again the next time.
Yes, a piece of souls do sedate ourselves. Just the numbers, pain we feel. Yes, at times we do hate ourselves, but each day we try to retake ourselves. So yes, a piece of souls do sedate ourselves. Just the numbers, pain we feel. Yes, at times we do hate ourselves, but each day we try to embrace ourselves. Yeah.